Today we're going to be continuing our series where we're looking at the message of the book of Ecclesiastes. We've already spent a couple of lessons on this series where we look at what the wise man is teaching in this book. We began by looking at what he said in chapter 1, that there is nothing new under the sun. That even though it may seem like to us that we are living in unprecedented times, really we're experiencing the same types of things that other people have experienced. It just may be new to us. Last week, we noticed the fact that he described in chapter 2 the fact that life is vanity and striving after the wind. That no matter what we pursue in this life, ultimately, it's all for nothing because it's all going to be gone and we are going to be forgotten. And so he's describing in this book the hopelessness and the lack of purpose and meaning that exists for us when we only focus on the things of this life. And he's coming to a realization or describing this realization that all of us at some point come to, that if we are focusing simply on the things of this life, then it really becomes almost pointless. And he builds upon that here in the passage that we're going to be looking at today, where not only is it the fact that there's nothing new under the sun and that everything that we do is vanity and striving after the wind, he also explains here in this passage in chapter 4, the first 3 verses, that the world is also filled with evil. Notice what he said here in chapter 4 and verse 1. Then I looked again at all the acts of oppression which were being done under the sun, and behold, I saw the tears of the oppressed, that they had no one to comfort them. And on the side of their oppressors was power, but they had no one to comfort them. We see a lot of people talking about oppression and people who are wanting to speak for those who are oppressed, who don't have a voice, and want equality, they want justice. Well, the wise man talks about this, that he sees oppression. He sees people being oppressed. He sees their pain. But what's interesting, he says, I looked on the side of their oppressors, and just as there is no one to comfort the oppressed, he said there's no one to comfort the oppressors. Which means that while we tend to focus on the oppressed, that look how difficult things are, look how bad things are for them because of who is oppressing them. And that is a reality. He's showing us here that the oppressors, they have a miserable existence too here in this life. That it may seem better because they're not the ones being oppressed and taken advantage of, but they don't have it good here either. Notice what he said there in verses 2 and 3. So I congratulated the dead who were already dead, more than the living who are still living. But better off than both of them is the one who had never existed, one who has never seen the evil activity that is done under the sun. Everyone in this life, no matter what our position is, no matter if we are in a position of power or in the position of being oppressed, everyone experiences and has faced and has been the victim of evil in this life. Everyone has seen that. And so the solution is not to, well, I need to be the oppressor rather than the oppressed. No, he says, it'd be better off to not even be living. It would be better off never to have existed. Now, as he's saying this, he's not writing this from a point of depression where he's considering ending his life because there's no hope of anything. Again, there is hope for something better. But he's explaining to us, he's wanting to clearly set the picture in our minds of just what this world is like when we forget God. When we ignore the hope that we have through Him and we only focus on the things of this life. This world is filled with evil. No matter what position we hold in it, this world is filled with evil and we will experience that we will be the victims of it. And then he explained later in chapter 8 that it is not going to be fair in this life. That we may see, okay, there's going to be evil, but if I do what is right, then maybe I won't have to experience it. No, he says in chapter 8, in verse 14, there is futility which is done on the earth. That is, there are righteous men to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked. And on the other hand, there are evil men to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. I say that this too is futility. You decide, well, I'm going to do what's good, and so everything will turn out better. No, you still may face the same treatment as those who are evil, as those who do what is wrong. What they deserve, what they should be receiving, that's what you may receive, even though you do what is right. And so what's the point? Why should we even try? Why should we put any effort into improving ourselves and doing good and doing what is right if we face evil? What's the point of even continuing on in this life that we live here under the sun? We're going to see the point. We're going to see what he gets to as we go through this book. But again, we have to lay the foundation. We have to see what he is showing us here. We have to get to this realization that he is describing here that we can't find hope in this life. We can't find meaning in the things of this life. We can't find purpose when we forget God and who he has made us to be. So we need to look beyond this life. We need to look past this, because if we are only looking here, then eventually we're going to be in the place where we are in despair. That we do see things as being hopeless because we see evil all around us. We see unfairness all around us. We see injustice all around us. We see futility and striving after the wind. We see that there's nothing new under the sun. This world is filled with evil. We see examples of that all the time. But what this needs to do is to make us realize that we have to look beyond what's here. We have to look past this life and look to God who created us, who created all things, and can ultimately give us hope. He eventually will show us that as we go through the book of Ecclesiastes, but we are looking at this foundation he's building. This world is filled with evil. And so our hope needs to be beyond what we see here in this life.